Hare Krishna. Hare
Krishna.
Krishna Mataji. Hare Krishna everyone. Let's start today's session on the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18. Let's start with the Mangala Charan.
Om.
Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnanajalaşalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam yena bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yudhapad Kamalam Shri Rupam Abja Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancha Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachat Deshitarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhatta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna everyone. Welcome to the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So we started the session, this whole series of 18 chapter in 18 sessions. However, chapter 18 is the biggest. So we will see. We will not try to finish, but we will go with the pace. And if we finish, that's well and good. Otherwise, maybe we will have the next session next week, and we will conclude the whole Bhagavad Gita then, including rest of the chapter 18, if in case we will not able to finish it today. And then following this, we will have our Goloka chart, where we understand the intricacies, details of spiritual world and material world, and the transition in between, how this world had started. And we will understand from the modern scientific point of view what the modern science says and what the Vedic culture says, and where those two combines, correlates each other. So great, let's start. So this is chapter, let me first share the other slide, because in this we have the clear distinction of the verses as per the description. What do we have in this chapter? Of course, being the last chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it summarizes everything. It summarizes everything we have covered, but along with a lot of other information has been given, which hasn't been provided before, or maybe has been indicated and referred before, but now it has been presented in a detailed and in very clear manner. For example, we did discuss in chapter 17 based on different gunas. So we always say this is material world, but what makes this material world is the material body and the three modes of material nature. So if the material body will go away, the spiritual soul within the material body will leave this material world. However, it depends how well we have lived this life, whether the spiritual soul will get the next body as the material body or the spiritual body. It depends. And again, as per the Shastras, as per the Vedic literature. However, it's not only the material body. We do have the material modes. Like when Arjun says that Krishna, I find it hard to control my mind. Looks like something from external, like external forces pushing us. And then Krishna says, yes, that external force is three modes of material nature. And we will see then the role of material nature more clearly in, or how the origin happened, in Goloka chart, which will start not next week but the week after. And then we will have the whole series of Goloka chart. We will discuss all different planets, all different distinctions there. So we saw chapter 17 based on three different modes, what kind of charity we should do, what kind of sacrifices we do. And if we notice ourselves, we can understand that it relates to us. The first time when I read it, it was very revealing that how what I do, how does Krishna knows this 5,000 years back? How? And that was very heart touching for me. That definitely in this scripture in Bhagavad Gita, there is something which is very natural to us. It's not just me, but obviously Krishna has written it down for the whole humankind or all the living beings. And that's how we understand scriptures are widely spread. It's not for one community or one religion, whether we believe it or not, it's there for everyone. Again, we can consider it as a manual. So when we buy the washing machine, we get the car, we can ignore the manual and we can start using the appliance. What most of the people do these days, they just take care of this body, but they don't know what to do. And as they go along, they find out what to do, how to do, what are the different kind of features, like what we do with the machines. This is what we have started doing with the body as well. Or what we can do when we get the new appliance, we have the manual with it. We go through the manual, right? Sometimes in detail, sometimes we just need to know the information is there, right? For example, regarding Vanprastha. Now, this is usually the last segment of our life. Now, we are not there yet, but we need to know that it's there in Bhagavad Gita or in the Shastras. So when we reach to that point, when we need to cross that bridge, we understand that that information is there, we can go and refer back. So Bhagavad Gita should be like this. We should try to get as much as information, but at least we should go back again and again, try to find out the relevant information. And that's the best usage of Bhagavad Gita we could have it. Of course, it's a granth, we can always pray to it, but the wisdom, if we can apply in our day-to-day life, that is the best outcome. So what we're going to say, so the very first 12 verses is going to say about the detachment. Now, the very first thing when Krishna says in chapter 2 regarding the soul and the body, and always one of the best analogy we can think of is the prison. Now, let's say a parrot is there in the cage, and the cage is golden. Now, somebody who likes the cage, keep taking care of the cage, but does not feed the parrot inside the cage, what will happen to the cage? Cage will be beautiful, right? Cage will be shining, but the parrot will die. And this is what we do these days. We take care of the material body a lot, external, internal, right? We do a lot of things, but what about our spiritual soul within? We do not nourish. We don't have that time to nourish. We can spend 1 hour on our body, relaxing, doing the meditation, doing the yoga, going out in the gym, playing the sports. We can do all sorts of things, but it's very hard for us to find out 1 hour in the whole week to feed the spiritual soul. So that should be one conviction we should have, that it's not only the cage, it's mainly the parrot inside, which is the soul within the body. And that's what Krishna is saying, how to detach from the body. Now, detach doesn't mean that we forget the responsibilities. Detach means that we are not only thinking about it. We are not so much engrossed about it, right? We should always remember the differences there. A lot of time when people start reading Bhagavad Gita, many parents, they say to the kids that, why, it's not, especially in the young age, it's not the age for you to read. You don't want to, you have a family, you have little kids, you need to take care of them. Because their understanding is that Bhagavad Gita will give the message of renunciation. And most of the people, they understand renunciation as leaving everything, going up on the mountain, in the cave, in the jungle. But of course, what Bhagavad Gita says is not that you need to renounce your work. You need to renounce the fruits of the work. And in fact, the desires of the fruits, because fruits will come anyways. But we need to renounce the desires of the fruit of the work. So this should be very clear. And that's the very first thing Krishna is concluding here. Then moving on, the conclusion of Sankhya and Vedanta. Now, Sankhya philosophy, where all the whole material body is consists of 24 elements. Now, of course, we always say Panchabhut, like 5 different, and we know earth, water, fire, ether, sky. We all know these 5 things, but that's just very gross level. There are many more things like the working senses and the senses which goes along with it. However, that's still material, not spiritual. But that's the Sankhya. We have done it before. And Kapil Muni in Canto 3 in Bhagavatam has given detailed information when he preached his own mother, Devhuti, in Bhagavatam. So that's another conversation we can have at some point. But then we have the Vedanta. Now it says Vedas are there, which are the supermost, and these are the oldest occult studies we have available to humankind. But it's very hard to read all those Vedas, the language, the way it's been written. It's very lengthy. We don't even have time for it. So what has been advised? That there is a summary. And that summary is given in the form of Vedanta. Vedanta. Veda Ant. Ant is the end. So Vedanta is not the end of Vedas, is actually the summary of Vedas. So rather than reading all the Vedas, we can read the Vedanta. And Vedanta will give us the picture. But what we say that, and in Vedanta, there are many things given, but rather than reading Vedanta, what we can do, we can read Bhagavad Gita, which is the summary of Vedanta. So Vedanta is the summary or the conclusion of the Vedas. And if you can read it, great. If you can read all the Upanishad, all the Puranas, which is great. But if not, we can at least read Bhagavad Gita, which gives a summary of all Vedanta. And that's what the section 2 is saying. But then the third, what we already discussed, 3 modes of material nature. Very first thing we need to understand that we are engrossed in it. First thing we need to understand that we are in a jail. So if somebody has been captured and put through a jail, the person is not suffering, person is enjoying there. Then the person will not feel like that he needs to come out of the jail. The very first thing is to realize where we are, right? That we need improvement. There is a scope of improvement. And when we know, then that's the first step where we can say the next, okay, now we should work forward. Now we should do something better. And that's very first thing we realize we are in trouble. Second thing, why we are in trouble. We are in trouble, what Krishna said to Arjun, that external force Arjun is referring to, Krishna made it clear. That's what we call 3 modes: ignorance, passion, and goodness. So these 3 modes are what we need to, again, now we are aware of these 3 modes. We need to be conscious, very conscious. We need to have a pure conscious. That pure conscious in Shastras is referred as Brahman realization. That if we are working in pure consciousness, and these days, most of the time you think with the kids, the problem is not only kids, if you think for us as well, but again, we have the responsibility, we take care of it. But kids, they find it very hard to maintain their focus. So it says the focus level been going down and down. There was a time 2 hours, 3 hours you could speak, but now 10 minutes, 20 minutes, kids, they lose the track. They forget where they are. The sessions are going smaller and smaller, especially in schools. If you see, even in the professional presentations, we have been advised not to go for the longer sessions, go for a small session, have a Q&A in between. Sometimes we have the quiz for the same reason. And this is what we need to think about, why this is happening. 3 modes of material nature. Once we realize that, then we will know, okay, what we are doing in this, and we will see in this chapter as well a lot more, that okay, we are doing the sacrifices, we are doing the charities in this mode. Once we realize, then we can transcend. We can move forward. We can say, okay, not in mode of ignorance. Let's try to do in mode of passion or mode of goodness. And then hopefully at one point we will do everything in mode of goodness. And maybe by the mercy of Krishna and Guru Gauranga, we will able to transcend even goodness, because the whole idea is to not to be in modes of goodness. Even though it's a mode of goodness, we don't want to be any mode, because modes are material and we don't want to be material. We want to be spiritual. So we will have to go beyond them. But again, before we will able to reach there, it's a gradual process. First, we need to be aware, and then we need to move on from one to another, from ignorance to passion to goodness, and then move away from goodness. So that's what we will see. Then the section D, where it says worshipping the Lord through one's occupational. So this is where we say, and this is what I asked it. I'm qualified, experienced engineer. So I asked the question from one of the Maharaji. He was giving the lecture. He said, any question? I said, well, Maharaji, I don't get it. You said be in Krishna consciousness 24/7. I work like minimum 8 hours as engineer. How could I be in Krishna consciousness while there? And of course, I was very new there. It was many years back. He gave me the answer, but I didn't get that answer straight away. He gave me the answer, but the true meaning of that answer, I only understood when I started spending time with the devotees. Then I understood that even if somebody is cooking, somebody is cleaning the floors, somebody is doing the deity worship, or somebody is doing the lecture, somebody is doing the engineering work or medical work, depends where your mind is. Right? Now, of course, it doesn't mean that if a doctor is doing the operation, mind is somewhere in the temple. No. But when you are doing whatever you're supposed to do, you do at your best quality, best capability. However, you always remember, why are you doing it? You're not doing it for the pride. You're not doing it for the prestige. You're not even doing it for your money, that this is your job and you're going to get the money out of it. You're doing it as the gratitude. You're doing it as the responsibility. That thank you, Krishna, you have given me so much skills and I need to give it back to the society. And when we have this gratitude, we become humble. And once we become humble, we become qualified enough to go back to Krishna. It says, and like while having children class, I remember in the beginning, it's been going on for a while now, so kids are very wise. But so there are many questions which they don't ask now. But initially they used to ask a lot of generic questions. And I enjoyed then, I enjoy now as well. Because the questions have changed, but that we should never lose the capability of asking questions. So I always encourage them to ask questions. But one of the questions they didn't ask, so I had to ask the question, which was that I said to them something like, oh, we will go to spiritual world, and in spiritual world we will find a tree, and that tree is called kalpa vriksha. Kalpa vriksha is a desire tree. You will ask anything, that tree will give you anything. And kids, I could see the faces lit up. Oh, I say yes, yeah. But so I said, what would you like? Would you like Xbox, PlayStation, chocolates? What would you like to have? They said, oh, can we have all together? Yes, you can have all together. But then I said, there is only one condition. You will only able to reach to the spiritual world when you don't have any desires. And I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense. You will reach there when you don't have the desires. But if you don't have any desires, then what's the point of having such a tree who fulfills the desires? Because there are no desires. And if you had any desires, then you wouldn't reach to that point. And that was a very confusing point. But if you think about, that's what it is. What we say that Krishna gives to someone who shares with everyone. But if you will ask somebody that, okay, you start sharing, that person will say, well, if I will keep sharing, I will not have it because I will share with everyone. But that is the point. If we share, we get more and more. And then again, another example I always give for the kids, that if I bring anything for Aryan being older brother, I say, Aryan, you need to give it to Shivani as well. If Aryan will share with Shivani, next time I will give it to Aryan again. But if Aryan will say, no, I'm greedy, I will keep everything for me, I'm not going to share with Shivani, what will I do next time? next time I will not give it to Aryan. Either I will split it myself, or I will only give half to Aryan, half to Shivani, or maybe I will say, okay, let's try Shivani this time. I will give it all to Shivani and ask the same thing. Could you share with your elder brother? And then I will see what she will do. If, as long as the kids will keep sharing with each other, I will keep giving to them. The day they will stop sharing, I will say you are not eligible to receive anything because you have lost the sense of sharing. And I still remember the very first thing, we were in Middle East then. Shivani's very first teacher, who was from Ireland, there were many Brits there, and she was going into British international school anyways. So what she said to Shivani, and that's the very first lesson Shivani learned in her school days, that sharing is caring. And when I heard that, I said, well, see, you don't even need to be spiritual to understand that sharing is caring. Right? So this is what we understand here, that occupational work, whatever we do, we just need to share with others. And then it becomes part of your Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not only that you wake up early morning and you chant on your bead or you do the prayers. You do that all anyways. You do that. But why? To strengthen your Krishna consciousness. But that is not the only time you need to be in Krishna consciousness. It's the mind of frame you need to be. Is the attitude towards whatever you do what matters. Not exactly what you do, but the intentions behind it. How do you do it? Why do you do it? So very important there. Then, of course, we will see from jnana to pure devotional service. These days, everybody would like to have the knowledge, but better than knowledge, it's good to have wisdom. But better than wisdom, it's good to have the humility and that sense of gratitude, which are the characteristics of pure devotional service. So if you will see, doesn't matter which sect you belong to, doesn't matter which religion you belong to. If you will see anyone, and I can take a lot of names here, whether somebody follow, there are many school of thoughts in Indian culture, in Vedic culture. Doesn't matter which school of thought you think, whether you are Dvaita or you are Advaita, whether you are personalist or you are impersonalist, whether you follow the supreme personality of Godhead or you worship to a demigod for some reason, all of them, they conclude to one point, which is the devotional service. That you do all the prayers, you do all the chanting, but right at the end, you got to do the service. And why do you do the service? To purify yourself. It's not for you. It's not for others you do service. It's for your own good. You purify yourself. And of course, if through you, if Krishna would like somebody else to become a devotee, to get that path moving, then that's just the mercy of the Guru and Gauranga. So working on that. The next one, once we got moved from jnana to devotional service, then how we can keep working on it. And then surrender to super soul. Now the surrender to super soul is such a powerful concept that again, even those who are not in Krishna consciousness, modern science, they are working on the concept. If you search in Google consciousness, right, you will get million hits instantaneously. Consciousness, a lot of PhDs are happening on consciousness, and the concept of consciousness has been given in Vedanta many years back, before modern science could even think of it. And now the kind of observations modern science, or the conclusions they are reaching or they're trying to reach, which is evident that they are reaching to the point which has already been given in Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gītā, the Vedic scriptures. So surrender to super soul. Super soul is the part of Krishna, part of God, which is in us, which is within us. And there are many great questions being asked on that. So super soul. Now when Gyanis sit and they say, oh, God is inside, you don't need to go outside. That's true. God is inside. Part of that God is inside, and that is called super soul, right? Paramatma, right? Karn mein Paramatma. It's a very renowned statement. I used to, when I was a child, I grew up hearing that number of times. And now I understand with the Shastric background evidence that what does that really mean? That living or non-living. So remember, the soul is there only in the living, but even non-living has super soul. So Paramatma is there, and Paramatma makes the existence happen, right? So that's the surrender to super soul. Then moving to the section H, the most confidential knowledge, which we have seen as chapter 9. Chapter 9 we saw as the most confidential knowledge. So if you see this chapter 18 is the conclusion, is the summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Then moving on, preaching and studying the Bhagavad Gita. So what we say that the best way of learning something, you share with others. So if Aryan is learning something, we say, Aryan, why don't you share it with Shivani? Shivani will learn it, and at the same time, Aryan will also revise himself. So rather than him revising something himself, so when I read the books, I always share with kids. So I read my guru's book, which the title is Gauranga, and then all the stories about Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji. It's amazing. The whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a very voluminous book. So you have three different sections there, and Guru Maharaj has summarized that in one simple book. And there are many stories there, and kids, they love stories. So at the end of the day, bedtime stories I always give, and they cherished it. Bhagavatam stories they have been listening for a while now, but Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji's books we are reading now, and they cherish, they enjoy so much, and they keep asking the follow-up questions. And because they hear that anything happens in their life, they recall those stories and they connect to those stories. And that's the way we remain in Krishna consciousness. Very powerful stuff. And this is one way we all could. There's another book I mentioned about Radhanath Swamiji's autobiography, the autobiography of an American saint. If you haven't, that's one book worth reading. How a spiritual seeker who was in America traveled without any funding to East. And of course, he's not alone. There are many more. There, Steve Jobs went to India for spiritual wisdom. Then there is another one called Ram Das, which is his initiative. And Ram Das and Radhanath Swamiji Maharaj, they met together in Vrindavan. And when we go to Vrindavan, what do we see? But when these guys, they're spiritual seekers. And that's the thing. They are Americans, right? They could be British. George Harrison was British, right? He was here in UK. He donated the whole temple. Why? Because he could feel the power of chanting, right? So it's not, now it's sometimes feel a bit of shame that we were born in India and we moved away from it and we are not connected to our own roots. But these guys, they are spiritual. They were spiritual seekers and they have managed to find, just because Paramatma within was guiding. Sometimes people say that, oh, I felt like something inside me was taking me, making me do this thing. And that's what we call the super soul within. What we need to be? We need to be receptive. We need to have in that mode where if Paramatma is saying something, we can hear it. Now, somebody said that, I'm not sure, a friend of mine who said that, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. Could you advise me? And one of the yardstick I always say, if you can share it with your mom, whatever the decision you're making, if you can share that you're going to do this, you can share with your mother, then chances are that it's a correct thing. If you cannot share for anything, oh, I can't share this with my mom, she will never let me do it. Chances are that that's not the best decision for you. So these things, if you think about, then Shastras, they are our mothers as well. Shastras, we say, another, Srila Prabhupada ji used to use it a lot, and he uses now through his books. He says, when a child is born, child doesn't know who is the father. Child, when obviously child grows up, child asks the mother. Mother is the one who introduces the father to the son, to the child, right? Child doesn't know that until mother says, this person is your father. Similar way, we don't know the God. Shastras, the Vedic Shastras, they are our mothers. Shastras tell us that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji, Krishna, they are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, if we have discussed the demigods and the God, but if you would like to discuss it more, we always need to read it. So a lot of time people say, oh no, I have full faith in Ganeshji or Mata or Hanumanji. What, should we stop it? No, we don't really need to stop it. They are very, very, very senior, elevated, Krishna conscious devotees, right? And how to understand? I will say two things. First, keep doing their worship. But more than that, second thing, read about them. Read about them, not only, for example, for Hanumanji, not only read the Hanuman Chalisa, but read about Hanumanji, what it says in the scriptures. And in Bhagavatam, in Vishnu Puran, in Brahma Puran, a lot of things being given by regarding Hanumanji. In Shiv Puran, in Skand Puran, in Skand Puran, Skand is the elder brother of Skand is Kartike or Murugan. Murugan we say is in South India and Kartike in North India. And so his name is a Skand. Now, why is a Skand is given in the scriptures? But Skand Puran is there. Skand Puran is one of the biggest Puran. We have 84,000 verses we have. In Bhagavatam, we have 18,000. Skand Puran, the biggest, is 84,000. So in Skand Puran, it says that it says everything about Ganeshji being the younger brother. So we need to read them. When we read them, we understand that what Ganeshji is saying to us, or what Murugan, Lord Murugan is saying to us, right? But no, we should never disrespect. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhuji went around South Indian tour, then he went around all the devotees' temples and he paid obeisances. And there are so many temples being created there, and Vaishnavas, they still go there. So it's a global harmony. There's no conflict at all. Conflict only appears when we don't go deep, when we don't read, we don't discuss. If we just say, oh, he's Vaishnava, he will not, he will fight with Shivite. No, somebody who prays to Shiva or Durgaji or anyone. No, there won't be any conflict if we understand the true teaching of whoever we are praying to. There will never be, but we have to refer to the Shastras, because Shastras are our mothers. They could only tell us who is the Lord. So that's where preaching and studying Bhagavad Gita comes in. Then at the end of this, Krishna had given so much, even though it says that time was very different then. It only took 45 minutes for the conversation between Arjun and Krishna, right? But at the end, Krishna asked Arjun that, are you okay? Did you get it, everything I said? And Prabhupada said the way Krishna asked Arjun, it felt like Krishna was ready to explain it again and more. If Arjun would have said, no, sorry, I still have some doubts. But what did Arjun say? Arjun said, thank you so much. All the doubts in my mind are clear. I know exactly what I'm doing. And then Arjun confirms, you are the Lord. And that's another reason we need to understand that whichever way we see, when Krishna is the Lord and Arjun himself is confirming it. And then right at the end, Sanjay, who has been narrating the whole Bhagavad Gita to Arjun, Dhritarashtra, saying that what Arjun said at the end to Krishna, and then he kind of make the predicaments that what's going to happen in future, which will be by then, it will be very clear to us. So great, kind of summarized in the index itself. But any question in anything we have discussed so far, please.
Prabhuji,
Hare yes, Krishna. Please.
Hare yes. Krishna. Can you explain the purification process that you mentioned?
Of Gita?
Of the soul, of oneself after, yes.
Yes. Okay. So great. Now, well, I was thinking when you said the glorification, of course, because we are reading
purification. Sorry, purification.
Purification. Okay.
Oneself.
Right. Yes. So yes, I will come to purification. But a very good point came into mind. I thought that you said glorification. Then there is a glorification of Gita. Is written in Padma Puran. It's called Gita Mahatmya.
Yes.
And we read that as well. And in the beginning, when we read Bhagavad Gita, I get a glimpse of it. But we can refer to that as well. Now, coming back to the purification, and that's so nice. That first thing is, again, to be conscious, to be aware. And most of the people, this idea attracts them very nicely. Now, people would like to get conscious, people would like to get purified, and why not? Now, a lot of time people say, well, we don't worry about spiritual world yet because we haven't met anyone who could say that spiritual world is great, apart from Shastras. But we haven't seen any human being because nobody came back. But we understand that those people who follow scriptures or who follow Krishna consciousness, they are definitely a bit better human beings, right? They are purified in many different ways. And the way purification happen, now there are many ways purification could happen. Now, obviously, super soul is within us, right? And we can get connected to super soul, and we can always take directions from super soul. And a lot of time people say, okay, I'm going to do meditation. And people say, we got the answers during morning meditations. A lot of time there was one Maharaji, and he used to say, whenever somebody used to go in afternoon, evening, asking something or discussing something and say, I can't find the answer to this, giving the challenge, giving his personal challenge in his life, Maharaji used to say, could you come tomorrow and I will give you the answer then. And then obviously this everybody said that, well, you always say that. What is different? He said, whenever I get the question, I ask the question in my meditation next morning, and I kind of get the answers then. And I give you the same answers. So now he said, whether Krishna gives me the answer or Super Soul gives me the answer, I don't know. But I always sit in the meditation and I ponder on, I think over on that, and then I get the answer. And that's the answer I give it. But again, purification means that whatever being conscious, if we are conscious what we are doing, then we will move away from the mode of ignorance, the very first thing. So again, like I always say, mode of ignorance, we need to avoid. Mode of passion, we need to control, right? And mode of goodness, we need to increase. So again, mode of ignorance, we need to avoid. Mode of passion, we need to control. So we need to have a choice. When do we want to have mode of passion? And when we don't want to have mode of passion. But mode of goodness, we want to increase. So the balance should be always between mode of passion and goodness. But mode of ignorance, we should go out. Now, if we will see these things will happen slowly, gradually, we will transcend. Now, chapter 16, we saw 26 good qualities. Now, the way purification process happens, gradually we will develop those qualities. We will develop those 26 qualities, and a pure devotee will do it. Now, again, the question Mataji asked that a bit more about purification. Now, the purification could happen in two ways. One, that we don't have a quality and we have acquired that quality, or we did have the quality but we didn't have that much. Means somebody said, oh, I was polite, but I was polite maybe out of 10 times I was polite 3 times or 4 times or 6 times. So compared to the majority I was polite, but still I think there were still few times I wasn't polite. But this time, because of my devotional service, I will keep increasing my politeness, or any quality we will work for. Now when we do the serving and like the volunteer work, again another example I would like to give from personal realization. I remember last year when all this pandemic started, especially in London, the toilet tissues starting going off the shelf very quickly. For some reason there could be so many things they were going off, but toilet tissues were which were going off very quickly. And I remember myself, we went to Morris and me and Aryan, and we picked up 3 or 4 tissues, and then there was a lady behind and we picked up the last ones. So I think there was a limit of 2 each, so we must have picked 4. And then the lady came and lady said, oh, I missed it. And then I looked at Aryan, and then Aryan, I didn't say anything to Aryan, but I looked at Aryan and Aryan gave one to her. And then she was full of gratitude. She says, thank you, thank you. And Aryan said, do you want another one? Because this is my dad. He already got 2 if you want. And she took the second one as well. And then Aryan was empty-handed. He says, sorry, dad, she didn't have any. I said, no, you did a great thing. Then I asked him, I said, what, at home, Shivani asked you so many things you don't give. But She didn't even ask you and you gave it. What's the difference? And he said to me, and that was last year, he's 11 plus now. And he said to me that when Shivani asked me, Shivani doesn't need, she just asked. But this lady, she really needed it. So that's why I gave. So I said, did you feel good when you gave it to her? And he said, yes, I felt something. I don't know. I said, okay. And I said, well, next time when Shivani will ask, you please give it to her, not for her, but to purify yourself. And that's the thing, if you think of, when we give to someone, a lot of time we say, oh no, that person doesn't need it. But the idea is that we are not giving to others for them. We are giving to others for our own purification. And this is the essence of devotional service. As long as we will think, doesn't matter what we do, we can go to the temple from the day twilight in the morning till evening, we can keep cleaning, and you will see somebody will come along and say, well, the why are you cleaning so much? And say, well, the temple is dirty, somebody needs to clean, so I'm cleaning. So we are cleaning that because we think the temple is dirty. But if we will be cleaning because we need to do the devotional service to clean ourselves, we are cleaning the temple because we will become more humble. Then the purification is there. Again, remember, the process is the same. We are still outside, externally, we are still doing the same thing. We are cleaning. Or it could be we are cooking for someone, right? But we do need to think of that. What's the reason behind it that we want to? And there's a great devotee at Watford Temple, and he's very old. He's 70 plus, and he's always cleaning, always cleaning. Doesn't matter what time you go, he's always cleaning. And I go along, I have a chat with him, and he gives me that answer as well. He says that I'm cleaning so I will become more humble because I'm full of false ego. And that's the reason I take this job. So I keep reminding myself where I belong. And it's amazing what devotional service could do. And I went this way and that way, Mataji. But I hope I able to give a bit of answer
Yeah,
that how. Yeah. Okay. Great.
appreciate it. Very
Hare
great.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. So devotional service is the essence. Okay, great. Let's move on. So we are doing chapter 18. We have discussed a bit of in detail what the kind of summary we have seen in Bhagavad Gita, and what we said initially that if you won't able to finish chapter 18 today, we will take next session next Saturday as the last session where we will summarize all 18 chapters. But let's move on. And at this point, I will, because this is very detailed, so I will switch off from this to switch on to this slide. All right, on this we can actually do, have we seen, okay, we will see here. All right, okay. So these are again the main topics, the main headers what we can think of. We have already seen it. So the 5 causes we can see in 13th and 14th. Then what we have seen it before, but we will see them again. Accept goodness and reject the other. So when everything is offered to us, this material world gives us everything. We need to become like swan, we say, who drops the water and takes the milk. So we need to be like that bird. And occupation as per inclination, then so it doesn't really matter what we do, whether we are CA, engineer, doctor, or any other occupation. We still could be Krishna consciousness. We don't really need to leave what we are doing it. And only way to Krishna, and again we will see, if we understand that, we can surrender to Krishna much easier. The essence of Bhagavad Gita, the conclusion of Krishna, what Krishna says, hear, study and teach. This is where the preaching comes in. That very first thing we hear, after here we study, and then we preach, which means we share. And the way I always understand, if you have seen a mine, a gold mine, let's say, or diamonds, what will you do? Very first thing, being greedy, you will take it for yourself, or I will take it for myself. But once I'm happy, I will give it to my relatives, right? But after that, I might start giving to my friends, and then I might giving to my neighbors. But I still have a lot more. What will I do? I start sharing with the whole world. And you might be thinking this is a very outstretched example. But if you think those people like Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, what he did, he has left his company and he has joined the charity which he owns with his wife. And he's willing to give, I think he has pledged to give more than 90% of his, 90 or 95% of his whole assets, not only his earning, but whole assets in charity. And he is already doing it. Now, how people reach to that? Just because they have already got everything for themselves. They have reached to that point where they understand they can't utilize anything for them. And then they feel the sense of responsibility to share with others. Again, it's not sharing, is not like you're helping others. You're sharing because it's your responsibility to share. And again, it's not what we do, but the why we do it. So if you think about this, and there is another guy, well, he's called Cynic, and he does many talks on TED Talks, and he says exactly the same thing. Not what we do. Obviously, he says this for entrepreneurial things, not what we do, but why we do it. Bhagavad Gītā, Krishna says exactly the same thing. Krishna has said it 5,000 years back. And then command me. So Arjun says, Krishna, I understood. Now I'm going to follow what you're going to say. Thank you. Let me know. And then Arjun said, okay, now I'm going to fight. Remember, the Bhagavad Gītā started because Arjun was very confused. Arjun. So now at the end, Arjun said, I want to fight. So Arjun, Bhagavad Gītā reminded Arjun of his own responsibilities. Nothing new. Krishna didn't give any new weapon. He already had all the knowledge from Dronacharya and all of the teachers he had, but Krishna gave the moral support from which his mind was clear and then his consciousness level was uplifted. And then who is the winner? Arjun was the winner. And then how he became the winner, we will discuss that. Okay, great. So moving on, again in a very different form, the very first one on the left top, detach work. We discussed this, that there are 5 reasons we will discuss. Then we could detach. And this is what renunciation is. Renunciation is renunciation the desires of the fruits of the work, not desire the work. So that's where Jnani and devotees, they go along. Those who are Jnanis, a lot of Himalayan Jnanis, and they are Jnanis, they are great, but they understand that renunciation means leave everything and go away from the society. That's not what Bhagavad Gītā says. However, if you do that, then it's a bit easier for you to renunciate the desire of the fruits as well, but that's not guaranteed. And you don't really need to do that. And the second one, non-doership mentality. Like when we understand we are not doing, our self-ego goes down. And then it says the modes, the 3 modes of material nature controlling us. And then once we are aware, then we again transcend ourselves. Because remember, mode of goodness is also material mode, and we don't want to be material, we want to be spiritual. So when we do good things, we do it as a sense of responsibility, not feeling that we are doing something good. But again, until we reach to that point, we need to be conscious that we are doing good. At least do good and avoid all the bad. And then gradually, slowly, we will move upwards. Then the purification through the prescribed duties. This is where whatever the occupation we are doing it, we don't really need to leave it. It's a misconception that we need to leave anything for Krishna. Whatever we are doing, we could be in Krishna consciousness. And then from Brahman to Bhagwan realization. This is where we understand there is Brahman, there is Paramatma, and there is Bhagwan realization. Again, the difference between impersonal and personal becomes very clear here. So that's another thing we will discuss. Then we have the pure bhakti, pure devotional service, we call it, acting in Krishna consciousness. And if we understand that, then we will understand what we need to do, where we are. Right. Oh, before that, yeah, that's okay. At the end, the glories of study and how we should study Bhagavad Gītā and how we should preach it to others. So it's our responsibility. Once we will read, understand, then we will start the preaching work. And as I was saying, anyone you pick, any different sects, Christians will do the missionary work, and other religions, they do the same. And within Sanatan Dharma, if you see Vedantic, if we see Paramahans Yogananji, he put his foundation together. Mother Teresa, if you remember, she used to do the same. And Swami Vivekananda did the same. Ramakrishna Mission Trust he set up, and in London also we have a branch where we could go and get the knowledge of Vedanta if we need to. So anyone you will look for, everyone will get to this level if they understand the spirituality in the right mood and manner. Then they will start doing devotional service and they start preaching. But now coming back, detached work, what Krishna says here. Krishna says, apitu karmani. This is, if again, Sanskrit words are so important, and we are doing Sanskrits for the kids, so, or for anyone, if you like to learn Sanskrit. And we will get to that as well. If you would like to read Sanskrit, then we are doing the recordings. We have done chapter 15 and we are currently doing chapter 12. So if anybody would like to, I have all the audios. They're very nice and you could just chant together. And it's amazing. It's amazing the impact we get out of it. And then it says, all these activities should be performed without attachment. So again, we need to do everything, but without getting attached. So the only thing we need to do is we need to be detached. Now, there's one great story on it, and because we are splitting chapter 12, chapter 18 into 2 sessions, so we have the opportunity of taking some stories. And I love stories. I work with kids a lot, and kids love stories, and we all remember the fundamentals, the principles with stories. So that's one of the reasons I love to discuss in stories. One of the story, if we discuss regarding detached work, and this might help us to understand when we see many other people. And again, in the book Autobiography of an American Saint, when Radhanath Swamiji Maharaj, when he was Richard, he saw Srila Prabhupada ji, for example. He saw many others, but Srila Prabhupada ji, when he saw, and then he saw his disciples had the mobile phones, and he had the video cameras with him and laptops with him. And then he thought, what kind of monk he is? Because he was what we call traveling monk himself, Richard. His name was Richard, then interim his name got changed to Krishna Das. And then Krishna Das, he used to move around and he didn't have anything with him. He will not even sleep under a tree for 2 nights. And I was discussing this with Aryan yesterday or this morning, that why traveling monks, they won't stay under the same tree. The only reason is that they don't even want to get attached to the trees. That it should not be that, because what if you, and especially in India, we will notice those people who are there under the tree, very soon what will they will open a temple there. Maybe a small, they will put the hut there, they will make a little place, little hole to put their things, and very soon that small tree will become their home. And traveling monks, they are not supposed to have it, because that binds them, and we would like to be in detached. But that doesn't mean that we leave what we are doing. So in the example we see, we do the yajna, we do the chanting, meditation, we do the devotional service offering to so many, but you do that as a sense of responsibility. And the example, the story, if we take it in that, so Narad Muni, and this is given in Bhagavatam. So Narad Muni goes around. Narad Muni was proud of himself, full of false ego. And now somebody will say, well, Narad Muni is one of the Mahajan, like 12 pure devotees. How he could be in false ego? Now again, this is, and he actually asked this from Krishna. And Krishna said, well, of course, I give that false ego to you sometimes, so you can, or devotees can take your example and learn something out of it. And there is another analogy Srila Prabhupada gives in his books, that when a new daughter-in-law comes in and mother needs to teach something to daughter-in-law, that because the daughter-in-law is new, so mother will not, and this is a very clever way of doing it. I'm not saying that every mother-in-law will do it, but mother-in-law, if it's smart, and this is what Srila Prabhupada gave example from his own experience, he said that mother-in-law will not scold the daughter-in-law, will not say anything bad to daughter-in-law, rather will scold the daughter. Even the daughter is doing right, but will scold the daughter saying that, why are you doing this? Why don't you do this way or that way? Because you know. So daughter-in-law is just listening, and daughter-in-law will get the idea. Okay, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? And this is like indirectly preaching. So when pure devotees get or do something bad, it's just to preach others, not because they have actually developed that false ego. So this is what again Krishna explained. But what happened? So Narad Muni ji goes and he asked Krishna that because he thought that I keep taking the name of Krishna. Well, I say Narayan, Narayan. So he goes around and he says that Krishna, who is your favorite devotee? Who is your true devotee? Who is your pure devotee you really love? And Krishna has many. But Krishna says, you know that king there, Amrish Maharaj, I love him. He's my best and pure devotee. And then Narad Muni got bewildered. He got confused. He said, what? Well, I thought you will take my name because I don't have anyone. I roam around taking your name, Narayan, Narayan. I mean, I don't do anything else. I just take your name all the time. And you're saying that king, Amrish, he's your pure devotee. He's a king. He's in the opulence. He has so much comfort around him. He's enjoying himself. And then Krishna says, well, okay. How about before I answer, you go and meet him? And he says, okay, that sounds good. Let me go and meet him. And now I might have shared this story before, so I will go a bit quick. But what happened, Narad Muni ji, he goes around, he goes to the king, and king already knew that he gonna come. So king had arranged a big feast because Narad Muni ji is Mahajan. He's a great devotee of the Lord. So he said, I'm your servant. Please let me serve you. He said, I'm here for something. He said, I know you are here for something, but we will discuss later. How about I offer you the great meal? You have traveled from so far. You have this meal, and then we will discuss whatever you want to discuss. He said, okay. So Amrish Maharaj was there. He made him sit down in the comfort place, and he ordered everyone that please make sure that Narad Muniji has everything one of the best. He goes, okay, yeah, right. And then he said, okay, I'm just coming. He left. And then Narad Muniji was enjoying all the delicacies. All right, okay. Sorry, Arun just reminded me that time is finished. Again, I'm on a full screen, so I can't really see the timing here. So I will just finish this story. In this, so Narad Muniji was sitting there, and right on the top of Narad Muniji, there was a big sword, which was hung tied with a thin, very thin thread, and it was tied just above him. And while Narad Muniji was enjoying his feast, he was keep looking at he thought, oh, oops. He thought, okay, let me move left, let me move right, but they were all everybody around him, and he said, no, 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 you keep sitting, you will enjoy, please have it. And then he kept eating, but he kept looking if that sword is falling over his head. And then very quickly he finished his meal, he got up, and at the same time Amrish Maharaj came, and Amrish Maharaj said, what happened? You look worried. Didn't you enjoy your meal? He said, what are you saying? I said, well, I requested these guys to give you the best we have in the country. Like some of these, even I won't enjoy. And I'm the king. Don't you think you will enjoy this? What happened? He said, well, yes, these delicacies were great, but my mind was fixed there, whether this sword is going to fall on me. And then Maharaj Amrish said, okay, you wanted to ask me something. He said, yes, I wanted to ask you something. And Amrish Maharaj said, before you ask something, shall I say that just like, even though you were engaged, your body was engaged eating the food, but your mind was there in that thread, in that sword, whether that sword is going to cut you. My mind is always there in Krishna, in the service of Krishna, in the mood of servant. And I know very soon, at some point, it will happen now, it might happen 100 years later, but at some point I'm going to finish this life. My mind is there. My body is doing all these kingly responsibilities I have given by Krishna, but my mind is always with Krishna. Do you have any more questions? And then Narad Muni just put his hands together. He said that the understanding of the devotion I had in my mind was very different than what you have showed me. And of course, you are a pure devotee. And that's where we understand the true meaning of detachment, true meaning of renunciation. It's not the work we need to renounce, it's the desire of the fruits of the work we need to renounce. And with that, my apologies. 2 minutes I have overgone. And even though I had the quiz, well, we will do that next Saturday. And we will summarize Bhagavad Gita. We will finish chapter 18 and we'll summarize the rest of Bhagavad Gita as well. Because chapter 18 itself is the conclusion and the summary. So if we do the chapter 18, we summarize all Bhagavad Gita. So I've taken a bit of time to conclude, to do the conclusion of the title, which is great, and share the story as well. I hope you liked it. And any more questions before we finish? Anything? Okay. If not, great. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed your association today, and I look forward to see you to conclude this series of Bhagavad Gita next Saturday at 10 a.m. Thank you
Hare
so
Krishna.
much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada.
Hare
Krishna to everybody as well.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Bol. Thank you so much, Mataji.